What is the true meaning of unbreakable strength? How does one find power in utter powerlessness? Let me tell you a real story of a man whose skin color made him sent to prison. Not for 1, 2, or 3, but for 27 years. Imagine 27 years of your life taken, your voice silenced, the prime of your life stolen. Will you not give up? Well, this video will teach you how can silence become the loudest form of defiance. How can forgiveness conquer unimaginable hatred? How can you reclaim your life from the darkest of prisons? The life of this extraordinary man holds the answers you seek. A journey from prisoner to the leader of a nation. Miss this video at your own risk. So subscribe to our channel, Realm of Realization, and let's begin. (1918) Mvezo, a forgotten corner of South Africa. A legend was born here. Before the world came to know his name, Nelson Mandela, he was named Ralilala, means troublemaker. He was born into a tribal royal family of the Thembu people. He was raised on stories of warrior ancestors, stories of kingdoms and courage. But the world he was born into was not built for warriors of his kind. By the time he could walk, he was already walking on divided soil, a land torn into black and white. The British Empire may have left, but another regime had arrived and South Africa was beginning to choke. In 1948, the all-white National Party, apartheid, came to power. It turned racial segregation into official law. Black South Africans were pushed out of cities, stripped of rights, and silenced under the weight of legislation designed to crush their humanity. Apartheid meant apartness, a political and social cage built to separate whites and blacks. Not just separate, but oppress the black people. Black South Africans could not vote, could not live in white areas, could not go to the same schools, could not sit on the same benches. The land they were born in suddenly treated them like strangers. And in the middle of this nightmare, a young Mandela watched. He watched people dragged from homes, watched mothers bury their children who were lost in protests. He watched until he could not just watch anymore. He left the rolling hills and walked into the furnace of resistance. In 1943, Mandela enrolled at the University of Witwatersrand to pursue a law degree, one of the few black students among many white faces. In the 1940s, he joined the African National Congress, ANC, a political group calling for equal rights. Mandela brought fire to it. Young, brave, unapologetically fierce, he helped form the ANC Youth League. Peaceful protests, strikes, petitions. They tried everything, but the regime didn't flinch. Instead, they bared their teeth. Then came 1952, the Defiance Campaign. In this campaign, thousands of black South Africans flooded into the whites-only areas in defiance. Jailed, beaten, mocked. But a message echoed that we are not afraid. Mandela's name was no longer a whisper, it was a roar. He became a national figure, a threat. The government watched. Then came March 21st, 1960, the day South Africa's soil was stained with blood. The Sharpeville Incident. On that day, thousands of black South Africans gathered peacefully outside a police station, protesting the racist passed laws that controlled their every movement. They held no weapons, just hope that maybe this time they would be heard. But hope can be dangerous. In a land ruled by fear, the police opened fire without warning. "69 people were killed, many shot in the back as they ran. Children, women, men. Some raised their hands to surrender. Blood on the pavement, bodies scattered under the sun, screams swallowed by gunfire, shook the conscience of the world. But it shattered something inside Mandela. This was no longer about patience. This was no longer a fight within the rules. Sharpeville Massacre marked the day when the soul of nonviolent resistance bled. And Mandela, once a firm believer of peaceful ways, has now transformed.
That it is useless and futile for us to continue talking peace and nonviolence.
If peace was met with bullets, then silence was no longer moral. Then Nelson helped form a wing named Umkhonto we Sizwe, or Spear of the Nation. It was the armed wing of the ANC, not to kill anyone, but to sabotage structures of oppression, power stations, government buildings, etc. But in 1962, they caught him, not in battle, but quietly, in the shadows of betrayal. He was arrested and charged with conspiracy to overthrow the state. And during the infamous Rivonia trial, Mandela stood in court, facing life imprisonment. Calm and resolute, he looked them in the eye and said, "I have cherished the ideal of a democratic and free society. It is an ideal for which I am prepared to die." And so they buried him, not in soil but behind stone. 27 years, 27 birthdays, Robben Island, a prison surrounded by icy waters and endless sky. No escape, no voice, no mercy. The cells were small, the labor brutal. Mandela spent his days breaking rocks in the sun until his hands cracked. Letters from family came once every 6 months, visitors once a year. His children grew up without his touch. His marriage collapsed under the weight of absence. But the cruelest thing about prison isn't the pain, it's the forgetting. The world moves on, and you're left behind. But Mandela was not made of silence. Even in chains he organized. He educated fellow inmates. He smuggled out essays. His mind sharpened. His anger refined. He studied Afrikaans, the language of his oppressors, not to surrender but to understand, to disarm fear. While the world spun, Mandela grew into something unbreakable. Time passed. The people outside had not forgotten. The struggle intensified. Black townships rose. The regime panicked. Sanctions mounted. The world started to look at South Africa, and it didn't like what it saw. And so in 1990, the unthinkable happened. After 27 years of pain, isolation, and suffering, the gates opened. A man, aged, gray-haired, stooped slightly from labor, walked out with a quiet dignity. No victory pose, no shouting, just calm. Nelson Mandela was free. And then came the question the world feared. Would he seek revenge? Would he burn down the system that tried to destroy him? But instead, he did something that an average person could never even think of. He shook hands with the very men who had caged him. He smiled at the guards who had watched him suffer. He sat at the table with the same leaders who once labeled him a terrorist. And in 1994, through the first free election in South Africa's history, Nelson Mandela, prisoner for 6664, became the first black president of the nation that had once treated him as less than human. But the most powerful thing he did was forgive. He invited his former jailers to his inauguration. He wore a Springboks rugby jersey during the Rugby World Cup, once a hated symbol of white dominance. He met hatred not with fists, but with open hands, because he knew true power is not in destruction, it's in healing. He didn't want to conquer white South Africans. He wanted to free them from their own fear, their own guilt, their own past. In one of his final reflections, he wrote, "As I walked out the door toward the gate that would lead to my freedom, I knew if I didn't leave my bitterness and hatred behind, I'd still be in prison. That is strength, not in overthrowing governments, but in conquering hate." Mandela was not a perfect man. He made mistakes. He stumbled, but he never lost his way. His legacy isn't in statues or streets named after him. It lives in every act of forgiveness, every voice that chooses unity over revenge, every heart that chooses healing over hate. The silent comeback of Nelson Mandela wasn't about power. It was about peace. A boy from the village, a lawyer in the city, a prisoner in the dark, president in the light, and above all, a man who walked through fire and came out carrying hope in his hands. So now you know how Nelson Mandela never gave up, and how he made a silent comeback, powerful without noise, but full of purpose. Now it's your turn. Somewhere in your life you're battling something too, and maybe this is the sign. It's time for your sincere and silent comeback, and to help you on that path, I have a gift for you. A video filled with 100 otherworldly quotes and life lessons from Gautama Buddha is a treasure that could transform your way of thinking. Click on it and take the first step in your comeback journey. Best of luck!